Here are the facts. The Titanic was carrying 2,224 passengers when it hit the iceberg, and more than 1,500 passengers lost their lives. That's roughly 67% of the ship's total population. Fact 2. Iron-eating microbes colonized in the shipwreck have been slowly turning the ship's iron into rusticles, similar to icicles, which will eventually dissolve into powder that's carried away by the ocean's currents. Fact 3. After surviving the Titanic tragedy, Dorothy Gibson, a silent film star at the time, planned to create the film with her lover, Jules Brulatour. During the shooting, she wore the same outfit she'd worn the night the ship went down, and suffered a mild breakdown in front of the crew because of survivor's guilt. Fact 4. Germany also made a Titanic film in 1943 during World War II. It was meant to serve as propaganda against American and British capitalism, and blamed the ship's sinking on greed. Fact 5. Robert Ballard, an oceanographer, met with the US Navy in 1984 to request funding for the technology needed to find the RMS Titanic. The Navy was more interested in using the technology to find the sunken USS Thresher and USS Scorpion submarines. Ballard agreed but asked if he could also use the technology to search for the Titanic if there was time left over after the mission. The Navy never expected him to find it, so it agreed. Ballard found it with just 12 days left of the mission. Fact 6. Her name was Lorraine Allison, and she was only 2 years old when she drowned. Her body was never found, and in 1940 a woman named Helen Kramer claimed to be the long-lost Lorraine. She maintained this until her death in 1992, but DNA analysis later proved she was lying. Fact 7. The CS Mackay Bennett set sail to retrieve the bodies out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, where many of the bodies are still buried today. Fact 8. They were depicted in a deleted scene in James Cameron's Titanic. Fact 9. Another proposal involved freezing the remains with liquid nitrogen, essentially making them a giant iceberg that would float to the surface. Fact 10. At the time of the Titanic's construction, the British Board of Trade based lifeboat requirements on how many ships weighed rather than on how many passengers would be aboard. This put the Titanic's requirements at 16 lifeboats when it really needed 32. Fact 11. Benjamin Guggenheim of the wealthy Guggenheim family was aboard the Titanic when it sank. He died dressed in his finest clothes so he and his staff could go down like gentlemen. Fact 12. The scene in Cameron's Titanic where the band plays on deck while the boat sinks is based on true events. The real-life Titanic band actually played for more than 2 hours after the ship hit the iceberg, in the midst of chaos and panic as passengers boarded lifeboats. Fact 13. A first-class passenger, Anne Elizabeth Isham, was already in a lifeboat when she decided to get back on the sinking ship to retrieve her beloved Great Dane. They died together in the water. Fact 14. The bodies had decomposed and their skeletons had decalcified, leaving only the shoes. Fact 15. All 35 remained on the ship to keep the power on so they could send distress signals and reduce panic among passengers. Fact 16. About a month after the Titanic sank, a lifeboat with 3 corpses inside was found about 300 miles away from the original site. Fact 17. A priest aboard the ship when it hit the iceberg refused to board a lifeboat so he could take confessions, help others onto lifeboats, and pray. His body was never recovered. Fact 18. Finally, in 2017, research emerged that it wasn't just an iceberg that sank the Titanic, but also a fire that damaged the ship and was covered up by the company that built it. Researchers say the fire burned for nearly 3 weeks leading up to the collision, and officers on board were allegedly told not to mention the prior damage to any of the passengers aboard the ship.